Hey y'all, welcome back to Better with Biscuits. I am Dylan, and today I'm filming two recipes. So I'm not sure if you'll see them both on the same day. But anyway, we are making a recipe today that is probably the closest recipe to my heart. And it is my Nanny's thin layer chocolate cake. Now, I have never eaten one of these cakes made by somebody else that I didn't like. They're all good. My mother-in-law makes a good one. My wife makes a good one. But it's not my Nanny's. And mine is not my Nanny's because only Nanny's is ever going to be Nanny's. But I have gotten it pretty close, I will say. I'm not going to say it's, right there, but it's pretty close. It's in the same ballpark. Where we're from in Georgia, a lot of people make this cake. There's usually like a couple people that are like known for it. My Nanny was known for it. It was at every holiday gathering. It was at every church dinner. And the cousins that lived local, that grew up together in the same town as my Nanny, we were lucky enough that it made its way to more Sunday tables. So like my cousins that lived out of town, they got it when she would go to visit, holidays when they'd come visit her. But we got it a little more often. And it was good. I'm just kidding. So this cake is very, very special to me. I had a very special bond with my grandmother, with my Nanny. She passed away in 2013. So she's been going a while, but we miss her, that's for sure. She was one of a kind, let me tell you. Sweet, ooh-wee, she'd just grab you and hug you. But now she didn't really. She had her opinion, and she didn't mind calling you out if she thought you were doing wrong. But just the epitome of a Southern Spitfire grandmother. That's what Nanny was. The grand youngins, when we'd all get at her house, we had the rule of the roost. She'd let us get in there and mess and gum and do, and I mean, she just wanted everybody to come together and be happy and share time together. And food, there was always food. We had a running joke that you ate every 2 hours, basically. But everybody would come into town and she'd just lay it out. And then as the years, kind of went on and she got a little on up in age, she quit doing as much, and the aunts and my mom and everybody kind of started helping out a little bit more. But she always made this cake usually. But I loved her. She would she'd call you out, but then there were times we would just sit and have prayer meeting in her living room, literally. I don't know why I'm fixing to start crying. Oh my God. It's just one of those things. I think when you have a kid, it's like you get a little more gushy. But and now that I have a kid of my own, I definitely would have wanted him to be able to meet her and her to meet him. But neither here nor there. Let's get to this cake. This cake is involved. But you can do it. So let's get to it. All right, y'all. We are getting ready to assemble this. I'm not going to say how many layer chocolate cake because it depends on how you spoon it out, is how many layers you get. Again, very near and dear recipe to my heart. This is just something that I've had to work a long time and make a bunch of to get correct. And it really can be kind of finicky, but let's all pray it works today. Because this is not even for our Thanksgiving. It's for a friend to take to their Thanksgiving. So, fingers crossed. Here we go. Okay. There are lots of recipes for this cake online. And they all, the recipe for the batter is all different. Well, my grandmother, I can tell you, used this right here. A box mix. So, ta-da, we're going to do that too. Now, let me tell you something. I make a lot of cakes. a good majority of them are from scratch. This cake, there is no extra reward. There's no extra crown given for making this cake from scratch. I have tried making it from scratch before and it doesn't work as good. These layers are going to be super thin, okay? So to get a lot of thin layers, you kind of want a loose batter, okay? A lot of homemade scratch batters are very thick, so you have to spread it. And you have to make sure it gets to the edge of the pan. Well, when this is a little more forgiving, I've found. We're going to have to add a little bit to it. It's not just the box because, newsflash, the boxes aren't as big as they used to be. All the companies of box cake mixes have really scaled them down. So we got to add a little bit to it to get it to be what it was in yesteryear. Let's see. So my cousin actually, my brother was the one that told me first, and I was like, "Are you sure?" And then my cousin confirmed. My grandmother used to cook these cake layers on top of the stove in a cast iron skillet. I thought they were crazy. I thought my brother was crazy, but then my cousin confirmed. So yeah, but I'm not doing that. I'm doing it in the cake pans. So let's get started. You're going to use the entire box of cake mix. Now, if you like yellow cake mix, use yellow cake mix. If you like butter cake mix, use butter. I like butter. I don't like the way the yellow cake mix tastes. To me, it tastes a little artificially. Yeah, there's like an artificial taste in the batter for, if it says classic yellow, I don't really like that taste myself. To that, we're going to add a cup of self-rising flour. And you already know, if you watched my biscuit video, the only flour I use is White Lily. Just a soft, really nice texture flour. Good for baking. We're going to add 1 cup of white granulated sugar. Then we're going to add, I'm going to give that a little bit of a whisk. Just so we can kind of make sure there's not a big pocket of flour somewhere. Get all the lumps out, which the mixer will do that too. All right, now we're going to go in with 4 whole eggs. All right. No shells. Now, I will say this too. If you're doing a scratch cake, you've kind of got to be strategic on how you put everything together. Since we're using a box, it doesn't matter. Put it on the bowl and mix it. Trust me. All right, now, even though we're using a butter cake mix, we are not going to use the butter that it calls for. Why? I find that if you use the butter that it calls for on the cake mix, the batter's a little thick still. So I like to use liquid oil, and I just use vegetable oil. It still has the butter flavor in the mix, so you're not missing a flavor. You're just kind of tweaking the consistency a little bit. Because like I said, you want a loose batter for this, okay? And liquid oil kind of makes for a more moist cake, whereas butter kind of has a little bit of a firmer texture. So, and then we're going to use 1.5 cups of regular milk. So this is like 2%. You can use whole milk. I wouldn't use buttermilk in this because, again, buttermilk has a very thick texture. You want a loose texture. If you don't hear anything else, you want a loose texture batter for this cake. So I'm using a 2% milk, and I'm going to end up using it all, but I'm only going to put, I'll save a little splash just in case the batter gets a little thick. As the cooking process goes, I can thin it out with the rest of that milk. Because I only have 4 cake pans, and we're going to do at least, it'll be, I'm going to try to get 3 cookings. So it's going to have to, I can't put all the batter in all the pans at one time. There's a lot of people that tell you to do this cake in throwaway cake pans because you can buy the amount that you need and just spoon it all in there one time. It doesn't cook as good. And you run the risk of it being misshapen from using those aluminum cake pans, those throwaway pans. So I would like more, so I don't have to cook so many batches. But we're gonna go with what we got. So I'm gonna give this a mix. Fun fact: you don't need to beat the fool out of this cake. It's not a pound cake. You're not whipping air into it. You're just getting the ingredients to come together, okay? So don't sit there and feel like you got to mix this for 5-10 minutes. That's what you want. You see how it just falls off? Like that. Loose batter, all right? Trust me, trust me, trust me, trust me. And I'm going to show you why in just a minute. Okay? So I'm going to give this one more run through with the mixer. And then we're going to start dishing it up in the cake pans. I'm also going to be a mature adult and not lick these beaters on film for YouTube or Facebook. I really want to lick them, but I'm not going to. Okay. Yeah, I got all the eggs. Okay, so do yourself a real big favor and get you some of this. Pam for bacon. Okay, you can use this. We also use Baker's Joy. This doesn't have the as strong of a smell as Baker's Joy. Baker's Joy is kind of strong, but it works great. But Pam for bacon is basically perfect release, no artificial preservatives, flavors, or colors. I've never had this fail me. So you want to spray these pans good because, like I said, these layers aren't really forgiving in that they're very thin. If you go to tear one, it's going to tear, okay? So what I do is I get the very corner, like the very lip of the pan, and then the bottom real good, okay? Because they're not going to rise real high. So as long as the very lip is where the edge meets the bottom, as long as that's good and a little further up, you're good. Now, I cook this cake in 8-inch cake pans. We have 9-inch cake pans that we use for other regular layer cakes. But for this one, I use the 8-inch. You don't get any less cake. It's just taller. You can make more layers and they'd be taller. If you make 9-inch cake pans, the batter's going to go further and it'll be a shorter cake. So I use the 8-inch cake pans. Use what you have if you want to make it. I use 8-inch cake pans so I can have more taller layers and the cake be higher. Because a lot of the wow factor of this cake is, oh my gosh, it's so tall and there's all those little layers. So I've just found that 8-inch cake pans work better for presentation purposes. I've made it in 9-inch, but it's been a shorter cake. I wanted the taller cake, so 8-inch it is. Now, also, like with everything in the kitchen, I'm a little particular about what I use. This spoon has been in our kitchen arsenal. I think my wife had it in her kitchen in college, okay? There's nothing fancy about it. It's just a plastic spoon, but it's got a very deep well. This is the cake batter spoon. If I'm making a cake and scooping layers out, it's using this spoon. So if this spoon ever goes missing, I don't know what we'll do. Anyway, so I'm going to put 2 spoonfuls of batter in each pan. How much is that? Well, I will measure it. All right, let's see. 2. Hold on, y'all. All right, I had to go ahead and add that milk and turn the air down because this batter's already thickening up. The temperature of your house determines how your baked stuff is going to come out too, just in case you didn't know that. Here in Georgia, we were in sweaters and blankets for Halloween, and I'm in shorts and a t-shirt today for Thanksgiving, and the best we can do is just pray it'll be cold for Christmas, okay? All right. All right. That was 3/4 cup of batter, okay? So each pan is going to get 3/4 cup of batter. So if you don't have a black spoon like me, you could put 3/4 of a cup of batter in your cake and be in business. 3/4 of a cup of batter in the cake pans and be in business. Okay, so now all you do, or all I do, is I just turn it and let it go to the edge. You don't have to spread it with a spoon. The more you go monkeying with the batter in the pan, the more likely it is to not come out right. Ask me how I know. You know what? It would be better if I just did this. 1, 2, 1, 2. All right. Now, like I say, I never say how many layers this cake's gonna be, because the thickness of the batter, which is determined by the temperature of the house apparently, determines how thin you can make them. Nanny made them pretty thin. Like I said, she must have had some tricks she did that she didn't share with everybody. All right, just make sure it gets to the edge. So now these are going to go in the oven. Now the oven's at 325. You don't want to cook cake layers real heavy, real hot. So 325, and they're going to cook about let's see, did I write the time down? From 9 to 11 minutes. So I'm going to put 10 cake layers in the oven, 325. Don't cook them higher than that. You kind of want it to be a low and slow cook on these. It kind of, if you cook them too fast, they'll dry out and you'll have a tough cake. So I've got them in the oven for 10 minutes. And then when they get out of the oven, we're going to let them cool in the pan for 3 minutes. I set another timer for 3 minutes. And then we'll turn them out on some wax paper on the counter and let them cool before we start making the icing. So I'm going to just repeat the same process I just showed you at least one more, maybe 1.5 times. I'll probably get at least 10 layers out of this. I might get 12, just depends on how the batter cooperates as it sits here. So there is some claim to a cake like this called the Smith Island cake. There's actually Smith Island Bakery that you can buy a cake from them and have it shipped to your house. Now, will it be Nanny's cake? No, it will not. But where we're from in the good old state of Georgia, it's a thin layer chocolate cake. All right, y'all. They've gone for 11.5 minutes. And this is what you want to see. You want to see the sides of the cake start pulling away from the pan. You know they're done. All right, I'm going to set a timer for 3 minutes. And we're going to let them cool in the pan before turning them off onto the wax paper. You want them to cool in the pan for just a little bit. And I set a timer because if you let one batch cool in the pan for 3 minutes and you let the other batch cool in the pan for 5 minutes, they're going to be different size layers. Don't ask me why, I don't know. But I feel like if you time it, if you time how long you let them stay in the pan when they get done, you're guaranteed consistent size cake. So that's why I do it. I'll bring you back when I turn them out and we'll pray that they come out. They look like they will. So anyway, let's pray anyway. All right. Turn them out onto wax paper. Now, my grandmother, she turned hers out on a bath towel. Now, don't get gross. It wasn't one she was bathing with, and it wasn't one that she would use to like clean, or she wouldn't like, she had a cat, but I mean, you don't have it around the animals. This is a towel that you use specifically for the kitchen. And I have one of those too. And if this cake were staying at my house, I would probably use the same method as a towel. But this is going to somebody else. And so I'm using wax paper. Towel, wax paper. Either one works good. So here we go. All right, moment of truth. Booyah. Boop. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so now you see there's some crumbs in this pan right here. I'm going to wipe it out with a paper towel. Don't wash them. You ain't got to wash them, but just wipe all the crumbs out with a paper towel. Spray it with more Pam and load it back up with 3/4 cup of batter. Put it back in the oven. Like I said, the layers went for about 11.5 minutes. These pans are different than what I had originally written the recipe down for. So it takes 11.5 minutes at 325, 3 minutes cooled in the pan, dump them out on the wax paper. And then when I get all the layers cooked, I'll bring you back and we'll make the icing, which is the star of the cake. Okay? Be right back. All right, y'all. We're getting ready to start this chocolate icing. All right, so you need a heavy bottom pot. I'm using a Dutch oven. You do not have to use a Dutch oven. Just a heavy bottom pot will work. I am going to start with 3 cups of granulated sugar. And then I'm going to put, 4 rounded tablespoons of cocoa. And I use either Hershey's or Nestle. But you want this stuff. I've made it before with like some kind of pure stuff, and it was way too rich. It's rich anyway, but yeah, don't use anything fancy for this. This is old school cooking. It ain't got to be fancy. And now what I like to do is I like to just kind of whisk the sugar and cocoa together to get out the lumps in the cocoa. Will it cook out in the cooking process? Probably so. But why not break it up a little bit to ensure that the lumps get out? All right. One thing I like to do is I like to keep the sides of my pot clean from sugar or cocoa, just because once this mixture starts to cook, you don't want sugar granules dropping down into where it's already boiling, because that can throw off your consistency. Don't ask me why. I'm sure there's some kind of scientific reason. All right, now to this we're going to add a stick of softened salted butter. 1 stick of softened salted butter. I don't know why I've started letting the butter soften before I put it in there. I don't know that it would do anything to the texture, but I do know every time I've made it with softened butter first, the texture's a lot better of the icing. Then we're going to add 1 12-ounce can of evaporated milk plus 1/4 cup of regular milk, whole 2%. Today I'm using 2%. And then we're going to use 3 tablespoons of light Karo syrup. Okay. Let's see. 3 tablespoons of light Karo syrup. This is where Nanny's recipe is different from a lot of the ones on the internet. A lot of the ones that I found on the internet don't use the Karo syrup. And it definitely adds, I think that's what helps with the glossiness and a little bit of crackle in the texture. This is not going to be crunchy icing. It's just going to have a little bit of crackle in it. All right, so you're going to combine everything in the pot. And then you're going to turn the eye on medium-low. Medium-low. Do not cook this high. You're going to turn on medium-low. And then I just kind of give it a little bit of a stir. It doesn't matter if the butter's not breaking up yet. It's fixing to cook. But you want to make sure there's not a big lump of sugar anywhere. And I'm already going to clean the side off. Just clean the side of the pot off. All right. And right now, I can do that. I can scrape off the spatula and put it in there. But when it gets to boiling, I'm not going to do that. So you're going to let this come to heat over medium-low. You're going to stir it pretty regularly. And then when it gets close to a low boil, you're going to stir it constantly. Okay? You want to keep this moving. You don't want this to scorch. But this pot's already, getting pretty warm. So I'm going to let this come up to heat, and I'll bring it back when it starts to do something. But again, medium, low. Low and slow is the only way to go on this, okay? All right, you can see the butter has melted. It's all liquid now. It's probably been on the heat for 6 minutes, but it's not boiling yet. You just want to keep it moving, keep it stirred, let that heat release. You're wanting the butter to melt and dissolve the sugar, and you want it to cook long enough that the sugar's not going to be crunchy. If you don't cook it long enough, it'll be more than crackly, it'll be crunchy, and it won't be good. I mean, it'll still be good, but it won't be the texture that you need it to be. So we're just going to keep it moving. And it'll come together. And I'll bring you back when it starts cooking a little higher, almost at a full boil, because it'll start kind of bubbling up and you'll think, oh, it's bubbling, but nope, not yet. And once it gets to boiling, we're going to set a timer for 2.5 minutes, and we're going to cook it for 2.5 minutes, and we'll remove it from the heat and start putting it on the cake. All right, can you see? You can see it kind of bubbling. That is not a boil. Keep stirring. Keep stirring, keep going. All right, now that's a boil. I'm going to set a timer for 2.5 minutes. And when that timer goes off, we're done with this. Keep stirring the whole time, the whole 2.5 minutes, keep stirring. Time's up. I'm going to take it off the heat. All right, let's get this cake put together. Now, retrospectively, I could have used probably 1/2 cup of batter in the pans because I got 10 layers, which that's still a lot of layers, but some of them are thicker than what I would consider to be typical for this cake. But it's all about your cake to icing ratio and what you like, what you prefer. I don't have the patience to fool with trying to make paper thin layers. And I like more cake than icing on this cake. My mother-in-law and my wife cook their icing until it's a little thicker, and they double the batch because they want a lot of icing on the cake. And I like it a little bit more heavier on the cake side. So, but if you get in the kitchen to make it however you like it. But this is how I'm gonna make it. So I've got the ugliest layer is the bottom layer. And this was the last one, so it was a little thinner than the rest of them. But this is, when I say it's thin, I mean it's thin, but it's gonna set up as it cools. It's been off the heat for probably 4 or 5 minutes. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to pour and spread. And you don't put a whole lot between because the layers are really thin. I'm gonna put just a little bit more though. All right, then you just start stacking it up. If you kind of push it to the edge, it ices the edge a little bit for you to get you going. Get you going on that. Let's see. Sometimes you gotta play puzzle with if there's a high side in a couple of them. Now I'm praying this don't run everywhere. This is already icing better than the cake I made for our little boy's baby dedication at church. We had dinner after for everybody, and I thought I wanted a little bit of Nanny at that service. And so I made her cake. And when I tell you that icing went everywhere, it was probably the ugliest chocolate cake I have ever made. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. All right, so that's it. Icing, spread, icing, spread. I'll be back when I get to the top layer. All right, y'all. Last layer going on. Now, I'm going to put a thin spreading of icing on the top layer just to kind of let it set up. And then I'm actually going to go run an errand before I ice the sides and put the nice looking coat on the top, because you want the top of the cake to look good. And when the icing is still hot, it kind of soaks into the cake layers. See how it's doing? I ain't tipping this over. But I'm going to put this thin little coat on the top and let it be setting up. Meanwhile, the icing in the pot is going to cool a little bit longer. And it won't be so runny, but it'll still be spreadable. And when I get back, I will, actually, I'll tell you what else I'm going to do before I go. I'm going to take my icing knife, and I'm going to spread what's run down the sides around the cake. I guess if you were, you know, if you do like a thick icing, you would call this the crumb coat, I think. And I kind of take it and push it up on the sides like this. Let's pull it at the bottom. I'm going to let it, I messed up my wax paper. I put wax paper around the bottom so I don't dirty up the cake board, because this icing goes. Mercy. Okay. All right. It looks messy right now, but when I get back from running my errand, the icing will be cooler, be more spreadable, and it'll look more smooth. This is not the finished product. Stay tuned. All right, y'all, I am back from running an errand or two in town. The icing is thicker now, you see? Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to ice the sides, and it's not running everywhere now, so it's going to let us get on the side, and it's going to stay. Do yourself a favor and let this pot cool off before you go to ice the sides of this cake, because when you get to the sides, that's when it will run all over the place. I have, in my experimenting days with this, I have had it run all the way down my cabinet before. It ran off the cake and down into the floor. I ain't lying. So I tell you from experience, give it some time to cool off. Now, if you cook it a long time, some recipes will tell you to cook it, you know, until a certain temperature or until it gets thick. If you cook it until it gets thick, you are working with limited time before it turns to glue. It'll be so hard you can't spread it. So you really want to not cook it. You want to cook it how I cook it, and you can let it cool a little bit and it'll be more pliable, okay? That's what I'm trying to say. Don't cook it so long that you have to work real hard and real fast to get it on the cake before it sets up. This way is oh Lord, this way is a little forgiving. All right, that's it. I'm going to indulge a little bit. There's a little bit of icing left over. So now I'm just gonna that is so good. Now I think too, to get the good crackle on it, like on Nanny's cake, she'd make it the day before she was gonna take it somewhere. And so as the icing completely cools, it will, the texture will change just a little bit. It won't be so thick and thick. It'll kind of, the very top will get just a little bit of sheen on it. And when you cut into it, it'll be the perfect little crackle. So good. Now I'm not going to cut this, obviously, because it's somebody else's. But there you have it. A 10 layer, what could have been a 12 layer if I'd have scaled back a little bit in each pan. 10 layer chocolate cake with Nanny's, close to Nanny's cooked chocolate icing. I think she'd be proud. I feel pretty good in that I feel like I've gotten close to her recipe. So it's good in its own right, but it might be good with a biscuit too. I don't know. See ya.